in order in which they appear on the agenda, we have one of my own bosses. I have 11 bosses. Some of them are more active than others, and Michel is one of the most active. He needs no introduction, but he is also a panel member of the Africa Progress Panel, as well as, of course, the former managing director of the IMF, and with many other responsibilities. We have second on the panel is Ksenia Lvovsky, I hope I've pronounced it correctly, Program Leader for Climate Change and Environment Department of the World Bank. All I know is that you're in great demand, so it's wonderful that you've been able to come to this meeting and share your wisdom with us. Bernard Petit, who's the Special Advisor for Development at the European Commission and Deputy Director General for Development at the European Commission until last year. And then André Schneider, who's the Managing Director and Chief Operating Officer at the World Economic Forum. What we thought we would do is ask each of our speakers to speak for up to 5 or 6 minutes. If they want to speak for less, that's fine too, partly so that we can get your questions and thoughts and reactions. And I was asked if I could make a few opening comments, and I do this with the caveat that, you know, I've had about an hour to prepare psychologically for this session. It seems to me there are a number of questions that I would like to understand better from this session. And the first is, you know, what are the financing needs for adaptation, and how do you calculate them? You know, where does development end and adaptation start? So that's the first one. The second one is what financing is available. You know, what are the commitments on the table? What is actually available? You know, to the degree that there isn't enough money, where is that money going to come from? The third question I have is, what are the current arrangements for taking money that may be available now or will be available in the future and translating that into things that actually happen on the ground? I don't know how many of you were in this room for the last session, but the point was made that even where adaptation funds are available, they're not necessarily being used. And what is the blockage? And how do we unblock that? You know, what are the mechanisms that are required to make adaptation funding effective and achieving results? The fourth question is, what needs to be done to fast forward adaptation? You know, do we have examples of success, for example? You know, how do we go about fast forwarding adaptation? What are the keys to unlocking this? If it's not just money, but partly money, and if it's not just mechanisms, but partly mechanisms, are there other things that need to happen as well? And the final thing that I can't help asking, particularly as Michel is up here, is what about Africa and the least developed countries? I mean, my understanding is that the least developed countries in Africa are getting a tiny slice of the action in terms of adaptation funding. I may be wrong here. And relative to the importance of the issue, both in terms of Africa's potential contribution to the global solutions and in terms of its population size and everything else. So those are the kind of questions that I have. And on that note, may I invite Michel to lead us in this discussion.
Well, thank you, Mike. I must be perfectly transparent here. Everything I know about Africa and is due to my collaboration with Michael Keating. and no. I have, you must accept that. I'm not sure it's a compliment, as a matter of fact. It's a fact. You are the author of this paper, An Agenda for Progress at a Time of Global Crisis for Africa. Of course, the team of 11, led by Kofi Annan, has signed that, and there are important people in this group, except myself, Mohamed Yunus, for instance, Bob Rubin, Peter Hagen, and so, Bob Geldorf. But the guy who has done the job is Mr. Keating and a few people in the room. Not only they have done that, but they have produced, together with the UNEP, a remarkable paper. This is, you will have that over there. This is only a summing up for African leaders, which is an important work on what could African leaders do in order to prompt action for climate change in Africa. And of course, what is there can be broadened very easily to other poor countries. So I don't know very much, but I know one thing I would like to say to start with, because it's a good piece of news, and there are not many. The good piece of news for adaptation in Africa is that, as far as adaptation is concerned, we don't need to enter into the big debate we have about the accuracy of numbers. 95% of scientists tell us that the problem is extremely serious, but there are 5% around saying, well, no, you are not sure, the numbers are not that serious, and so on and so on. And this pollutes the debate, and this put brakes in the needed decision. As far as adaptation is concerned, we have not this problem. Why? Because that even if we were wrong as far as the exact numbers needed for adaptation, the consequences of the financial crisis are such that all what is needed as a priority, as a consequence of climate change, is more than justified by what is needed due to the consequences in Africa of the financial crisis, particularly as far as the Millennium Development concerned, reaching the Millennium Development Goal are concerned. So here we know that we must go, and we must go now. Now, because people will not start suffering after Copenhagen or in 2012, but because they are suffering now, and that the project to answer and to alleviate their suffering and to protect them, to shelter them from the climate change are there ready to be implemented, provided the financing and the proper programming is put in place. Of course, in the African Progress Panel, we are very mindful of the fact that African leaders must be on the driving seat, must make the proper programming, must improve their governance to add efficiency to whatever is needed and required. But we know also that resources are of the essence, and that in the present circumstances, even if the situation was improving very significantly during the last 7-8 years, as far as ODA, as far as remittances, as far in particular as foreign direct investments are concerned, now the situation turns to be very bad, particularly in these last 3 fields. And then the question is particularly pertinent to see where are the resources, what else could be done, and how. I don't know if I should elaborate on that now. Possibly we should that at a later stage of the debate. We should be bold. We should look also more than so far on possible innovative financing. I know that each time you say that, somebody will tell you, well, you are an utopist or a utopian. This is not true.